traffic.
Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together for three-time Emmy Award winner, Mr. George Noory.
Hello there. We're going to keep the first part of this formal, and the second part we'll walk out here and spend the rest of the day. Thanks for coming. Steve Bassett, special thanks to you for putting together just an incredible show. Now, as for me, Steve spares no expenses. I don't know how to drive around Washington, D.C. at all. That's right, who does? So I said, Steve, just get me a limo. Pick me up at the airport. Something to make it easy on me and producer Tom. No problem for Steve Bassett. So we got off the plane, waited in baggage claim, and waited, and waited. I couldn't find the limo. I said, Tom, we've got things to do. We've got to get to the hotel. We've got conferences and meetings. What are we going to do? He said, George, let's just take the bus. Take the bus? All right, we took the first bus that came by. It was a senior citizens bus. Tom and I were lucky to get the first two seats up near the bus driver. Told him where we were going, and he says, well, we really don't get that close, but I'll get you as close as I can. And off we went. I love senior citizens. I'm going to be one very soon. They were 80s, 90 years old. While we're on the bus, a 90-year-old woman kept coming up to the bus driver with a handful of peanuts, giving the bus driver these peanuts to eat. And he would eat them, she'd go back. She'd come back with a handful of peanuts, give it to the bus driver, he'd eat them, and she'd go back. I'm looking at Tom going, what is this? Well, after about the fourth time, the bus driver finally said to the little old lady, Miss, what are you doing this for? She says, well, we just want you to have our peanuts. And he said, well, why aren't you eating them? She said, well, we can't. We don't have any teeth. We just like to suck the chocolate off. That's how my day started. Steve had asked me to do a little formal presentation before we get into our Q&A. And we'll do that. Questions, a little meet and greet. As you know, Coast to Coast is now, and I'm very proud to say this, we are now on 521 radio stations. Thanks to all of you, FM and of course Streamlink as well. And as you know, we've had this opportunity, as Steve and Cheryl said in the introduction, to interview all kinds of incredible guests that have run the gamut from everything that you can imagine. And now, of course, this being this X conference, the study of UFOs and disclosure, I've been fortunate to talk to some incredible guests, some of whom are probably here right now. Just by a show of hands, how many coast-to-coast guests do we have right here? Look at this. Look at that. My God, if anything happened to this, the whole show would be gone. And as you know, the guest segment on Coast to Coast is 3 hours long. And I have 10 clips to share with you tonight. So 10 times 3 hours is 30 hours. I'll be back tomorrow at about 8 at night. I'll see you while you listen. I had an opportunity years ago when he wrote Way of the Explorer to talk to Apollo 14 astronaut Edgar Mitchell. Absolutely riveting. He told me that we've been visited, that he's been told we've been visited, and I believe him. But it wasn't until last year that when he went to Britain and appeared on a British radio show, that the same things that he had been saying on Coast to Coast were picked up by the Europeans. And things just went crazy. I want to play this very brief clip of Edgar Mitchell. Here we go.
There are billions and billions of galaxies and planets and galaxy clusters, star systems. The idea that we're alone in the universe is, once we now start to understand a little bit about it, is utterly absurd. We're not the youngest by any means, probably, nor certainly are we the oldest civilization around. There have got to be billions of them out there. It's just a long ways out there, and we've only gone a few miles out off our own planet, not to mention outside of our solar system, which we will have the science and technology to do if we pursue it, I believe, by the end of the century we're in, provided we don't blow ourselves up with stupidities in the process.
Oh, that's so true, Edgar, so true indeed. Do you recall the case in the 1960s of Barney and Betty Hill, the abduction case?
I read that case, yes. I'm aware of it. I have not read about it many years now, but yes, I'm aware of that. I was aware of it when I was looking into these things quite a few years ago.
When you were a youngster, growing up, were you interested in this entire field of consciousness and the possibility of extraterrestrial life out there?
Well, since I grew up in Roswell, or in the vicinity of Roswell, it was hard to escape it. But however, the so-called Roswell incident did not take place until 1947, and I was a senior in high school at that point. As a matter of fact, in 1947, I was a senior in high school, and the ranch where presumably this all occurred, my grandfather was a cattleman and traded cattle, and we knew the ranchers in that area.
Now tomorrow at 9 o'clock, Edgar will be speaking. Who wouldn't believe this guy? Now you talk about credibility. You talk about trying to get to the bottom, to the truth of disclosure. There we have it, folks. I think one of the top people for this world to sit back and say, what the heck is going on? To me, and I've said this before, if Edgar Mitchell says it's true, I would take it to the bank. If there are any banks still open. How many of you know the name James Fox? Heard of James? Some of you, not all of you. He was born in England, came to this country put together a documentary called UFOs, 50 Years of Denial, and then his career just took off. Now, I've had the opportunity to interview James several times on Coast to Coast and also to appear on the Larry King Show with him. Listen to what he says about UFOs and disclosure.
Speaking of film footage, you remember when we were on Larry King with Buzz Aldrin?
Yes.
We talked about that sighting. Well, a couple of months ago, I put out a statement to anybody, any military or government officials with the sort of experienced unambiguous UFO cases to get in touch with us for continuing the progression of the film. And I get a 16 millimeter film roll sent to me. It was taken on Apollo 11. It's a copy of whatever was taken. And I take it in, of course, I have it transferred digitally. And it shows, there's no audio, but it's clearly Apollo 11. And I talked to Buzz about this, I think in 1999 or 2000 when I was supposed to meet with him in the south of France. It clearly shows for about 4 seconds what appears to me to be a disc, a saucer-shaped disc. And I don't know if they're leaving the moon or if they're coming or going, but it's out the window of the capsule and it was shot by Buzz Aldrin. Very interesting, right? Because I remember him telling me, confirming this story for me quite some time ago.
Another issue, another compelling story of the existence of UFOs. You know, all of us are here because we believe, or we want to believe, or there's something happening in our lives that seems to be drawing us to this. I mean, Steve Bassett, for an example. I've known Steve, as he was saying, since 1997. Have you ever seen a person more driven with trying to get to the bottom of what this is? And I think most of you have that same gut feeling, or you wouldn't be here today. We need to find out what's going on and why it is happening. Because it is the basis for who we are as well. We're looking for answers. You know, I can paraphrase that quote from one of my favorite movies, Contact, where the alien was talking to Jodie Foster, saying that we are subject as humans to having such beautiful dreams and horrible nightmares. And until we can get the right answers of who we are and what we are, we're going to be plagued with this inner feeling that you all have. I mean, how many of you have that emptiness inside of you? I do. I do all the time. And I know most of you probably do too. I want answers. And this is one way of us trying to find out how to get it. Nick Redfern has been a regular guest on Coast to Coast. Born in Britain, he's a ufologist and a darn good one. Very active in official disclosure. I had an opportunity to talk with him constantly on Coast to Coast, and it's just a clip of what he has to say.
Why do you think the great UFO cases were old ones? What's happening? How come we're not getting great new ones?
Well, you know, I think that is an interesting question. I mean, obviously, you know, I'm not able to give a definitive answer, but I mean, my own opinion would possibly be, you know, if you look at when the larger waves of UFO encounters occurred in the 40s, 50s, and 60s, you know, one theory that's been postulated is that this is some sort of first wave of visitations, if you like, or the most recent wave, and perhaps the level that they're coming here now has been reduced, or potentially, you know, I think it also could be that the military has a greater handle on the situation to where perhaps we simply don't get to hear about the reports because the secrecy surrounding the subject is being clamped down at a far greater level and the military is really in control, where in the 40s and 50s, you know, there are quite clear indications that the military was quite panicky about